go up on the stage. I'm scared of heights. So let me tell you the secret of this transition. It was taught to me by the same guy who taught Greg Dixon, who is Jeremy's dad, who's our mentor, a guy named Ben Reed, a very large man who needed undergirding under every stage he stood on, because not only would he stress the stage by his weight, but the vibration of his voice, which if you heard it on the radio, when I first started learning from this man, he was the guy assigned to the Church of God students at Azusa Pacific University, where I went with Greg Dixon, and before Jeremy was even a twinkle in his daddy's eye, as they say. And Greg was a very gifted man as well. So what Ben Reed taught us was many things, but I watched as probably 7 years before Ben determined to retire, he put his hand on Greg's shoulder and said, "This is the man. Don't look anywhere else. This is the guy, so don't be looking anywhere else, because if you do, you're going to get a lesser man." And as a result, good things happen. And I go every year, or have gone every year, to the large church round table made up of all the pastors in the Church of God across the nation that have over 500 people in their congregation. We compare notes and see what that guy's doing, what that guy's doing. And constant commentary was made about Ben's pass-off to Greg and how that worked so well. And so I made it in my mind, because I realized something I'm going to share with you right now, which is this, that some 18 years ago, 15, I don't know, it's all lost to me now. I was teaching Pauline literature at Azusa Pacific University, and I had 35 students in a class, and I asked them how many of them were planning on going into ministry. I expected in that group at least a third to a half. You're required to take a certain number of undergrad units in theology and Bible. And so Pauline Lit, of course, Paul, as you know, wrote most of the New Testament, and so I expected most of those people would be aiming to go into ministry. I asked them to raise their hands if they were planning on going into ministry. 35 students, not one. And that was 18 years ago. And I asked, let me just ask the question that is begged here, why not? And they all, one by one, said, number one, this degree is costing me too much money. At that point in time, a degree from Azusa Pacific would cost about $150,000. Today, that same degree costs $260,000. And that's pretty much the same as in all the 7 West Coast Christian universities, whether it's Point Loma or Biola or any of them, is going to cost about that much. And when you come out, if you can find a job in ministry who can pay you, and a church large enough to do so, they're going to probably start you at about $35,000. So you spent $260,000 for just an undergrad degree, and you come out and make $35,000. Does anybody see a mathematical problem here? It is huge. As a result, starting about 30 years ago, bear in mind, I went to Azusa Pacific. My first year was $2,800 for room, board, and tuition. Wow. I graduated, Linda and I together, we owed a massive sum of $10,000, which we wondered if we'd ever be able to pay off. You know, you can't buy a used car for that now. So a lot has changed. What it did, to make the short of it, is it shut off the ministerial pipeline through that avenue, through standard educational models, entirely. Does anybody here know anyone in your churches that is going to, through a bachelor's program at a private Christian university, who is planning on going into full-time ministry? Anybody know anyone? You got one. And where are they at? Okay, is he currently pastoring? Yeah, he's currently in a role. Is there any young people who aren't in a role? You see what I'm saying here? Nobody's going. And the reason is it's become impossible. And then we wonder why the church isn't doing well. It's because there's no leader coming up. We heard the statistics last night about our district, which has been long in coming. We're not alone in this. This is all evangelicalism. It isn't just the Church of God. This is all evangelical churches are suffering, and we're wondering, is it because we're less, whatever we are. Let me tell you the primary reason. There's no leader. And when there's no leader, there's no church. Quite simply, tell me another way. I don't know another way. So as a result, about 15 years ago, I began to come up with the idea, we're going to have to create another model. Back in 1900, the Los Angeles Training School for Missionaries and Christian Workers was started in LA, which eventually became Azusa Pacific, and through the years, and then has faded. As all churches, I will tell you this, most church colleges, I'll just make one commentary. Most church colleges start out conservative and move to liberal, and then they no longer kick out pastors at all. So as a result, that's where the modern day church is at. More desperate than anything else, we need a gateway for young people to go into ministry if they feel God calling them. They're going to come out to a lifetime job that will pay them 1/3 of what they could make in any other industry with their same skill set. Am I right, Jeremy? I know you're making big money, but the people called to ministry aren't going into it for the money, but they do recognize their primary responsibility is to any family they may start, biblically. And so as a result, they can't afford to go into ministry and do this. So we are starting a school which has been long in planning. It's been the curricula of this thing is an outcome-based educational model. In other words, we're trying to prepare people to be successful at this enterprise, because I'll tell you what, there's pastors in this room and they will tell you across the room how discouraging it is to go to it's a great deal of effort to put God's word out there. It is a huge effort because Satan is pushing against you all week long. He's taking all the thousands of other distractions and getting you onto that and trying to keep you from saying whatever God's word may be to his people. And so you work through days of this and you wonder if it's any good, and you, as one guy said to me years ago, I'm just get so tired of trying to hit a home run every week. And it is discouraging. But I will also tell you it's the most rewarding enterprise on planet Earth. Nothing comes close. We're looking for people who want to be in ministry. We're looking for people who want to be effective. We're looking for people who want to gather a large crowd to hear the word of God and have their lives changed. Because that's really what matters. Two things that this school, as it were, will be majoring in. And you'll hear more about this. I'll try to get it out to your pastors. Think about young people in your congregations who may even think they might want to be in ministry. And refer them to me, because this fall we'll start with the beginning curriculums. Some of this will be unique to each person because some people already come with a few classes from Liberty University online or something like that. And we'll work with whatever they've got to put together a unique thing to fit their need and their capabilities, to wire them for success as they come out the gate. If you come out and you know how to preach, but nobody comes, as Jeremy said, so he showed up and he's young and he's good looking and he's fly. I was never fly. And he expected that might work, and it doesn't work. There's techniques to make your church grow. The two things that you have to know in today's world is, number one, how to even do this thing called ministry, and there's a thousand skill sets in that bag. Number two, to know how to defend the very existence and reality of God. To even know how do you begin to defend that against a questioning mind in today's world that has grown up in a skeptical age and says, I've got to see you show me the reality and the proof of God. So apologetics is a real big thing in today's ministerial skill set. We're planning to teach that a lot. That's My last master's was from Biola in apologetics back in, I think I graduated in 2006. And it's a kind of a unique thing. Very few people are taught it. If you have any kind of inclination, let me recommend them. The price isn't that high, and you can get ongoing education in that. It's fantastic. So this fall we'll begin the classes that we've been planning for years and years and years. I've sat around the table with all the guys, the large church round table every year, and many other guys with large churches, and asked them, if you could start over, what do you wish you would have known back then? And that's what we put together so that a young person, a medium-aged person can come into this thing and actually make a difference. Would you like to be involved in something that would bring people to Christ and you knew you would have a reasonable chance of being successful at this? Then that's what we're looking for, okay? So teaching was one thing. So I had to answer the deeper questions, ongoing educational models for pastors who are currently serving in both apologetics and, number two, how to get their church out of the rut and growing again. Because I'll tell you what, I know what it's like to go through periods of non-growth, and it kills you. And I don't care how big your church is. You come to a plateau and you begin to wonder, am I relevant anymore? And then you wrestle that down and you struggle with it and you find answers. And we have through the years here. We've been very fortunate. Last part is this. Know this, that every person you ever meet in your life, every person you ever meet is lonely. Every last person. I don't care how many friends they have around them, they're lonely. And they're hungry for dignity and meaning and purpose. They're absolutely hungry for that. Every last person. We don't choose here what person we're actually calling here because we have every age group here. But we know that they're all hungry and they're all lonely. It doesn't matter what they look like on the outside. It doesn't matter the number of letters next to their name, or they're rich or poor, young or old, male or female. 1 Corinthians 9:22, Paul says, I've become all things to all men so that by some means I might reach them. In other words, I'm going to use anything in my tool bag to get them here. So you'll notice here we have everything going on, from breakfast burritos every Sunday morning. Those are a huge evangelical tool. Coffee is everywhere. You've got coffee in here. You have permission to have coffee in here. The floor is stained. You don't know because there's chairs on top of it. But the fact is that's okay, because you know what? That coffee stain may mean a life came to Christ, and I don't care about the stain. Does that make sense? Okay. Sometimes I think we protect things too much. We use a variety of things, but I can tell you this. No matter where your church is at, they are a light in your community. And you have more capability in that church than you can even imagine. I am absolutely convinced that we can take the smallest church in this district and double them in the space of 2 months. No problem. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Talk to me. We'll get there. And we use a variety of techniques. One technique that we use in the outskirts of what we do is called the Dollar Club. The Dollar Club is when people give their money into the offering, we take all the loose dollars and we put them together to give that away. Every 2 or 3 months, we find someone who is in need, who is outside of the church. We don't want them, most of the time, we don't give it to somebody inside of the church because this is an evangelical tool. And we give it away. And at Christmas, we don't have that video here today, but it's a tearjerker when you see people their groceries are bought. You know, our people come up to them and just behind them in line, they've got a full thing of groceries at the one store in town where the people of least means usually go. And we walk up behind them and say, can I get those groceries for you today? And I mean, sometimes they laugh, sometimes they just break down in tears. It's beyond, it's worth everything. And when we started doing it, I wondered if it would work. And then pretty soon I started noticing that the offering plate was actually getting full of dollars. In fact, there was days that we'd get $500 or $600 bound up in rubber bands. Go, I know what you're doing, okay? Because it's so rewarding. And we're not going to play that one though, are we? Okay. So a few weeks ago, here's something you can do, and you guys can do that. You can afford that. Guess what? Because if you start giving away those dollars, and you might be hoarding those right now, don't. You can afford it. If you give those dollars away, more will come in to take their place. Because once you start the generosity thing, people get hooked on it, okay? Here's another thing we just got hooked on this week, which you can do at any church in anywhere where you live. But we just happened to notice a few weeks ago, they started tearing up the road through town. And when they did, all the mom and pop businesses in town were in desperate need immediately because they were operating on that thin of a margin, and suddenly the margin was gone. So I walked into a little thrift shop, and I asked the gal, how's it going? She said, you're my first customer today. It was like 1:30 in the afternoon. And I said, are you going to make it? She says, I've been in business for 22 years. I'll be out of business in 20 days. It's over. I walked up and down and saw the same thing happening to all these little mom and pops because of the sewer line being put in from this massive hotel complex going up in the north town. And the idea came to me, we can do something about that. Has anybody ever seen flash mobs on TV where people come in and suddenly a choir shows up in the middle of a mall, something like that? And I thought, okay, instead of a flash mob, let's have a cash mob. Let's go in and absolutely deluge a little business with more business than they've had in their life every week. So the first week we chose token thrift. And I mean, within days, she was going ballistic because every one of our people brought these cards. If my guys can hand out these cards, they have a stack of them. Just take, it's a simple card. It just simply says on there, Sierra Pines cares about you. And it has the worship times on the back of it. And we took this in, and she said within 3 days we had saved her business and saved her frame of mind. She was so thankful. She wrote us a long note to share with the church. The next week, every week we do a business. Every other week we do a restaurant. So the following week, Linda and I had noticed that Pete's Place, which is usually a very popular site in town, and I think mostly owned by Jehovah's Witnesses, and we're trying to bring them to Jesus. So we noticed there was 2 cars on a Sunday where there's usually 50 or 60 cars. So we asked them, how are they doing? They said, not good, not good. We don't know if we're going to make it. So it was much easier talking my people to go into Pete's Place. So what they do is they go in and they say, we just want you to know we care. That's it. And they buy a meal. They're generous. At Token's Place the week before, one of our guys walked in apparently and told the gal, this card gives me permission to spend whatever I want in excess over your price. And he bought a $5 item and paid $100 for it. Okay, that's how they're making it. So this last week, actually we've had several, but this last week, this one was really tough to talk people into. I went in and talked to Judy's Donuts. And I asked Judy, it wasn't Judy, her name's Ra, I believe. Is that right, Michael? Is she Cambodian? Okay. And she has this little donut shop, and I said, how's business? She said, not good. And I said, how not good? She says, horrible. and I don't know if I'm going to make it. And so this week, we handed 2 of these to everybody in the congregation and said, you will go buy donuts. And if your wife says you can't because of your weight, you say, I'm doing this for Jesus. And you take this card and you leave 1 card at Judy's. You buy a dozen plus 1 donut for you, or whatever you require. And then you take that dozen and you give it to the CHP office, the sheriff office, the police, the fire department, the teacher's lounge, wherever you can find to give this away where it would be a blessing to give a dozen. Who doesn't want a dozen donuts? If there's something wrong with you. Okay, so, and that's what they did this week. Mike went in with his camera and actually just his phone and shot this. Mike is not leading our video department. That would be Andrew, who's upstairs. And I don't know, Andrew's not doing so well because he told me it was ready. Now he's panicking. Worst job in the whole church to have is the sound booth and the media, okay? It is the most punishing, horrible job. When he gets that going, we'll just stop. But the computer locked up. Yeah, the computer's always locking up. We'll go live, okay?
Hey, so I just want to say, I walked in there, I handed Ra one of the cards. She's like, for years, even before me, our youth pastor would go in and he would buy a dozen donuts for Bible study, and he would always give an extra $1. Through the efforts of all the years he was there, and then as I picked it up and carried it on, she ended up purchasing a roof for her family back in Cambodia. She didn't know what church I was from. That's on me. And so when Bruce went in and did this work, she says, I think I know a Mike. He's a pastor, but I'm not sure where he's at. Well, I went in on Friday and I said, hey, look, we just love you. She had tears streaming down her face. She was overwhelmed. She was so excited. She didn't want me to buy the dozen donuts I was buying. She tried to give me 3 dozen. I said, no, the point is to bless you. And she was just beside herself. And so this is an effort that can be done within your communities. And it's very simple. We just pointed one direction and it changes people's lives. So yeah.
It doesn't cost you anything. You're having people do what they want to do anyway. Okay, everybody wants donuts. Everybody wants to go to Pete's Place. If you haven't been there, you owe yourself that. Pete's Place came to tears. Several people at the front were in tears, showing us the stack of cards that they had. Any church can do this anywhere in your neighborhood and bless the church, the people around you. It costs you nothing. It's awesome, and it's so much stinking fun. And you get donuts. So if you would be interested, or you know anybody in your congregation who would possibly be a resource to go into ministry someday, effective ministry. If you want them to know how to blow a church out of the water and growth, if you want them to be able to answer questions, the deepest scientific, historical, philosophical questions that you need to answer to a young person today who has a skeptical mindset going to university, recognizing that 85% of all young people that go to church and go to secular university after going to church lose their faith in the first year. We can outfit them and fortify them against that.